You are listening to Down Home. The oral tradition of speaking poetry or spoken word has a long history that predates the actual printing press. In fact, performance poetry in Africa dates back to prehistoric times. Some would say the modern spoken word poetry has its roots in the Harlem Renaissance, blues, and other music that came out of that center of black creativity back in the 1960s. Whatever its origin, spoken word poetry continues to be a powerful way of self-expression, especially in the black community. This week, Jay and I have a conversation with two-time Canadian National Poetry Slam champion Dwayne Morgan. Dwayne's award-winning poetry career has taken him all over the world with a number of notable performances, including Super Bowl number 46, poetry readings for former Governor Michelle Jean. He shared the stage with artists such as Alicia Keys and Drake. He's also performed for former President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, sip of breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, sip of breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, sip of breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, yeah.
Welcome to Down Home, the Nova Scotian experience from two black men. I'm Derek Wise, and as always, we have Jay Jones.
What's happening?
And our conversation this week is with poet, speaker, and social entrepreneur, Dwayne Morgan. Dwayne, how you doing, man?
I'm excellent. Looking forward to our discussion.
Great. Break it down for me, man. Social entrepreneur, right? That's an interesting concept. Break it down for us.
So for me, much of the work that I've done, like I started my own business when I was in high school, and that business was around bringing people together for the most part around social things, around things that mattered, whether it was, causes, whether it was, just being Black youth, the stuff that I've done has always had some kind of purpose. So it hasn't been running a business for the sake of just making money, but it's to have a social impact on the environment that I find myself in.
Right. That's a very interesting concept.
Yeah,
it is. Now, what inspired you to express yourself through spoken word back in the day?
It's a funny story because I wasn't one of those young people who grew up and had a diary and journaled and, would just write lyrics and stuff like that. That wasn't me at all. And in high school, I ended up producing a pad, all of this talent, but I was the one who had organizational talent. So, they had talent and didn't know what to do with it. And I was the one who had no talent, but I knew how to put things together. So I put together this talent show. And then as a few days before this talent show, I realized that, everybody was going to come and watch all my friends on stage. And nobody really cares about who organizes the show. They just love to see, who's on the stage. And I was like, I need to find a way to get on stage too so I can get a little bit of the shine. But I knew I couldn't rap, I couldn't sing, I couldn't dance. So I'm like, how on earth am I going to get on stage in this thing? And I decided to write a poem. So I wrote a poem. That was the first poem I ever wrote, and that poem changed my life. And I've been writing poems ever since that day.
Wow. What was the poem called, just out of curiosity?
It was called In Search of the True Brother, and it just looked at a lot of the stereotypes that existed around being a young Black male at that time.
Cool. Yeah,
nice. That's interesting, man. So just out of curiosity, because I saw in your bio that you did kind of leverage that, and you went into the kind of the political realm, and you sought like a seat in the provincial election back in 2018. How do you go from your beginnings to actually trying to take a swing at the political realm there back in 2018? Sorry.
It's an interesting thing because, they reached out to me and they're like, hey, would you ever consider doing this? And it was like a short 5-minute phone call because I was like, absolutely not. And they were just adamant. They just kept getting like different politicians to call me. And they're like, with the work that you're doing in community, imagine if you had a seat over here how you could amplify the work that you're doing. And I hadn't really thought about it that way because, you know, a lot of times, you know, when you're young, when you're Black, when you're coming up, there's an idea that you have in terms of who are the politicians. And you forget that almost everybody who is a politician was something else first, was something else before, and then they moved into that. So then I had to ask myself, well, why do I keep saying no? What is stopping me from, you know, at least trying and seeing what this thing is? So eventually I realized that I was limiting myself.
Right.
And then I was just like, you know what? Let me just give it a try. What do I have to lose? Like, there's three to five people in the race. All of us know that only one can win. So there's going to be more losers than winners here. So as long as you have it in your head that I'm doing this, and not solely, you know, just to win, but to learn. And I encourage so many people who look like me to do it. I mean, it's difficult, and it's, you know, when you're young and you're Black and you're rolling up in certain neighborhoods and knocking on people's door, you know, it comes with its own set of, you know, challenges. But there are people that I met along the way who won, right? I finished second place in my writing, first time out, and I was against two people who were sitting politicians, right? So I was like, you know what? I felt good about that. But there are people that I know who won. And now as a result, because they know that I ran, it's like when I need their ear, I could be like, yo, I'm trying to do this thing. Can I get a letter? Can I get a reference? Do you have somebody that you can connect me to? So now I also realize that the power of running is the network. It's the having access now to people who are in positions that I can reach out to them because they know me and they know who I am.
Yeah.
So I encourage so many people who look like me to get involved in the process. And even if you don't get a seat at the table, you'll at least be close enough to the chairs to be able to like whisper in somebody's ear and be like, yo, here's what's up. So, you know, I think it's such an important thing that we don't just look at it and be like, that's something for somebody else, because everybody there was somebody else before they got there.
Yeah. So the power of networking, man, the power of
Absolutely.
networking.
Yeah, you got to throw that hat in the ring, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
See where it lands.
Absolutely.
So, you know, spoken word, expression, it covers a lot of topics based on, you know, who you are, what you feel, what you see, the social, you know, things that we see on a daily basis, and then interpret it in your own way. Now, beyond that, in your mind, what social issues do you think aren't getting enough traction these days?
Man, it's really hard to say, because it's like, you know, there's so much dialogue and discourse about, you know, stuff that's happening, you know, in the world. We had, you know, this awakening that people had around, you know, racial stuff, you know, with the murder of George Floyd, which lasted, you know, a few months, and then, you know, you just move on to the next thing, and then you wonder, all right, who has to get killed next for us to rekindle this? Because it's not something that sustains itself. It's sexy in the moment, but then, you know, real life beckons, real life calls, and, you know, all the allies have gone back to Starbucks and are gone back to the regular life and are just doing their thing, right? So it's you know, a lot of that stuff is still not being discussed. A lot of the systemic racism in our society is still not being discussed. And it's interesting, because when I say it's not being discussed, when we look at things that are happening in the States, you know, they're passing laws to say, let's not discuss this. Let's never discuss this. Let's not even bring up that this history even happened, because, you know, if we start teaching kids what actually happened, what's it going to mean for our society? And I'm sitting there like, what am I hearing? Like, you're actually saying, let's not teach kids what actually happened out of fear of what they might think about the world that they live in right now. And it is such a dangerous thing that we actually have people in power who think that this is a good idea. But it also reminds us that when we look at, you know, history, when we go through the school system, we're taught that, you know, history is the story of what has happened. And then you realize, once you get a bit wiser, that history is a curated story of what happened. And then you have to ask, well, who is the curator of this history? Who's the one who sat with all of the history and decided which parts we're going to put forward and which parts we're going to take out and why and to whose benefit? So, these are the things that we're looking at, dismantling, but it's so hard to dismantle when you actually have people in power saying, hey, let's pass some laws that says we can't even talk about this. And I think that's the danger of where we're at right now.
Yeah, it's a scary thing, isn't it? And I read somewhere that history is actually the story of the quote unquote the victor, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So that's the spin that we get. That's the spin that we get.
Yeah, it's all about the status quo, keeping their vision in line with what they want to see. It's
absolutely,
it's a crazy world. But yeah, we touch on some of those themes all the time, and it's frustrating because how do you break through? But the only other thing you can do is just sort of have these conversations, and hopefully that brings around something. At least the things that people aren't getting taught, they can sort of catch wind and go, oh, and maybe hopefully with the world that we have today, everything you can investigate and you can find out. So you might have to go a little bit deeper, but I think people who stand for those things should continue to stand for those things, because you got to just keep on keeping on.
Yeah, definitely.
So
and I just to build on that just real quick is the other danger, I guess, is that we're living this world of social media and stuff where everybody's on there, and that's where a lot of people are getting their information. And a lot of us, I have a degree in mass communication, so I'm always looking behind the curtains of everything that's happening, and we often don't even realize that so much of what we are seeing is being programmed to us by algorithms behind the scenes. So the world isn't even necessarily how we see it and how we think it. It's how this algorithm decided that we want to see it. Yeah. So, even in the things that we believe, we have to question those things. So even on my phone, every minute I'm getting, notifications from CNN, and then I get one from Fox News, because I think it's very important that we always listen to multiple sides of what is happening. So if you have the opportunity, listen to CNN, listen to Fox News, listen to Al Jazeera, listen to BBC, and get all these different opinions. And somewhere in there, you'll find the truth, because there'll be some things that they all said. And then you'll be like, this is the truth. The rest of this is opinion. Yeah. And because of these algorithms, the world is being presented to us in a way that isn't necessarily how the world is, but it's based on every time we press like, the algorithm says, let's show them more of this, right? So we never actually get to see another side. And this, the drawback to that is then how do you develop critical thinking skills? How do you learn to intelligently argue with somebody who thinks something differently, because their Instagram feed might be the entire opposite of your Instagram feed? Simply because of what they've liked. So if we can't get to the point where we can intelligently have conversations and debate with each other, then where do we go? We're just in these silos thinking that this is just how life is. And that's a very dangerous place to be.
Yeah, it's like, go ahead, D.
No, I was just going to say, and because at the speed that those algorithms feed that to us, it's not like 30 and 40 years ago when you picked up a newspaper or you might have had a stack of newspapers and you're reading through the newspaper. No, this is instant. It's happening like that, right?
Yeah, and it takes away the critical thought and, the critical lens that people look at things. They just look at it as, and what the other thing too, like it creates this mob mentality too. And then people start posting their stories, and then you follow whoever, and then you start seeing their stuff, and then it rah, and then it goes on and on and on. But I totally agree with that. So with just to change gears just a little bit, with your spoken word, obviously you produced a lot of events, and I've actually been a big fan for a lot of years. I do spoken word from time to time myself. I love the way it, I can express my way through that. So I've known about you for years, actually, and I've actually been to Brothers Speak and When Sisters Speak. What is it like helping others with the creative process? It's different than creating for yourself. So can you break down the difference between the two?
Well, I mean, creating space for other people has been a big part of my entire career. I told you the story about how I got started, and I got
Mhm.
started by creating space for other people. So,
True.
even when I started my business was to put on talent shows and to create space for other artists. And, as I was doing my own thing, I was realizing that there were so few welcoming environments, so few places that actually wanted to hear my style of poetry, the topics that I was talking about. So I was always kind of cast to the side. And I always wanted to make sure that those coming after me would not be in the margins, but would be on the main part of the page. So
Mhm.
I never wanted them to feel the rejection that I felt, coming up. So I always worked to try to create space and to create avenues and to build infrastructure that would allow those who came after me to have an easier go at it than I did. When you're just doing stuff for yourself, it's really just about you. What do I
Yeah.
think? What do I feel? What do I want to
Mhm.
get from this? I think the real value is in when you are no longer thinking about you and really thinking of, what is needed. What can my legacy be? How can I help other people? So, when I do an open mic once a month, and I do it with a young man that I've been mentoring for years. And now he's mentoring poets. So I'll see some of those poets come to the mic, and they'll thank him for being a mentor. And I'm like, every time they thank him, they're thanking me without even
Yeah.
knowing it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's you just have to pass that down. And I think as a community, one of the things that we have struggled with is being able to pass things on, is being able to set up the next generation for success. We
Mhm.
always want to stay in a position so long that we just burn out and die, and then there's nothing left to pass on. And I think the greatest thing that we can do is when we open up a door, find a young person who wants to do something with that opportunity,
Mhm.
give them everything that you have, and be like, yo, run with it. Because
Yeah.
everything that you do is part of my legacy, right?
That's
I don't
true.
have to do it all.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
empower you to continue it, my legacy is still happening
Yeah.
while I'm at home fading into the background, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have to burn ourselves into the ground just to say that we were here, just to say that we did it. Like, how many Black businesses have a succession plan? Have, who's going to take this over after me? How,
Mhm.
like, we don't think, in that kind of way. And I think, so it's almost like every generation reinvents the wheel. We got to get to that point where it's like, yo, instead of reinventing the wheel, let's build 3 other wheels.
Yeah.
Now we have
Yeah.
a car. Now we
Yeah.
can take this somewhere. And I
Yeah.
think that's just a big part of, we're starting to see with the younger generation, they're starting to get that mindset. And it's very encouraging to see, because, there's so much that, we've missed out on because the elders didn't pass things on to us while they were still relevant, while it was
Yeah.
still, at that moment, yo, this is the time to pass it on so that somebody young and fresh can take it and build it in a new, don't wait till it, dies and then there's nothing left but the embers. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I put so much effort into the young people that I work with and I mentor, and it is such a blessing to see them taking that and then passing that on to another
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah. So create your own lane and leave a trail, right? And
Yeah,
so
Yeah.
others
absolutely.
can follow. I guess that sort of inspired you to create Up From the Roots, your
Mhm.
company. Now, is
Yep.
that the umbrella of a whole bunch of other things, or is that just deal with the spoken word aspect?
So, yeah, Up From the Roots is my company name, and it's based on the quote from Marcus Garvey that a people without knowledge of their history is like a tree without roots. So
Mhm.
I always wanted to create something from the ground up. I wanted to create something that was self-sufficient. I wanted to create something that wasn't dependent on government funding or any other bodies or sources outside of me and my crew. So it was set up from the very beginning that everything that we did would fuel the next thing that we wanted to do, so that we never had to be dependent. We never had to have our hand out asking people for stuff. It was always a matter of being self-sufficient with the stuff that we were doing. And I've kept that model for 29 years. And
Mhm.
so everything that we do falls under the Up From the Roots umbrella, whether it's, poetry shows, music shows, comedy shows, whatever, it all falls under the Up From the Roots umbrella.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, totally inspiring, because I've seen some of your productions. I think it was the Hummingbird Center where you used to do the
St.
Brothers
Lawrence Center for the Arts.
Yeah, I went to, I think for a few years, I went to see quite a few, and it was always packed, and it was always interesting. You had different artists from different places, and it was so cool to just sort of see them express themselves and speak about the social things that people want to talk about, whether it was from their own perspective or things that everyone knows about. It was I was always kind of like, wow, this is actually pretty cool, because spoken word wasn't always it's kind of a niche thing, you know what I mean? So, but I mean, it does have quite the following, but to see it come together like that and people embrace it, it's just it's a continuous thing. Although spoken word has been around for a long time.
Yeah,
pre-colonial times, African times. So it's good to see sort of how you have sort of become a griot in that way, sort of doing what you do and passing along your inspiration. And it also sparked something in you, which is your poetry, which you didn't think you could do at first.
Hearing you speak, the passion and the fulfillment that this is all brought out in you, it's inspiring, man. To be honest, it's very interesting, and it also kind of mirrors what we're trying to do with this podcast. So it's good to see. Good to see, man.
Yeah, totally. But you know what? I'm so passionate about the stuff that I do. I'm just passionate all the time, even just talking about the stuff that I do, because somebody might hear this and not be familiar with me and be like, yo, they just feel that passion and be like, yo, I need to get involved, I need to do something or whatever. So I try to be as passionate every day, even with the young people I work with, I'm like, if you're not going to be passionate about what you're doing, why do it? Like it makes no sense. Like there's so many things that you can choose to do in the world. Why choose to do things that you're not passionate about? Like it's just a waste of time, waste of energy. Like just find those things that bring you joy, that bring you love, that fill you with purpose, and just go out there and do it.
Yeah. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. That's what my grandfather used to say to me all the time. J-boy, ain't nothing to it but to do it. And he wasn't lying.
Those are words to live by.
I asked you if you would maybe be able to sort of bless us with one of your spoken word poems. So if you have one of those you would like to share with us, we really, really appreciate it.
All right, for sure. So, with this one that I'm going to do, it's interesting because as I mentioned, I've been doing this for 29 years, and for 29 years, I've had to do poems about violence in the Black community. And it's unfortunate that you still got to write these poems because things are still happening 3 decades later. So the challenge then becomes, how do I write another one of these poems in a way that it doesn't sound like the last one that I wrote? So this is the most recent of those, and this is called Picture Day.
Cool.
There's a line out the door of 13-year-old Black boys dressed in their Sunday's best, accompanied by parents looking stressed but understanding this rite of passage. It's Picture Day. So we dress up our teens and make them say cheese, continue this routine every 2 years, images archived online in case our sons die gone too soon. This way, the media can be given the official images that we want used, not the ones they always seem to find that have us looking like we've lived a life of crime and are unworthy of compassion, empathy, inquiries, investigations, and nobody wants to be here. This is nobody's idea of a fun afternoon, a good use of family time, taking pictures in case our sons die, but everyone knows that a picture says 1,000 words. And this might be the only obituary spoken heard, because we are living in a world where more Black boys will die in Chicago than soldiers during the Iraq War, where Black boys will continue to die from being poor, with poor choices and poor options, leaving us pouring out liquor, spilling spirits for lost spirits, because Black lives only seem to matter when they're dead. So every month we put aside funds for our son's education/funeral fund. We live in the now. Tomorrow seems like a cruel joke when you grow up in communities that make you play Hunger Games for survival, creating rivals out of street codes, often outlined in chalk in our street clothes. We think we're dying prematurely. They think we're dying right on time. So every 2 years, we reluctantly join this line, ensuring that the first suit he wears is not the one that he is buried in, that he sees how handsome he is, that he gains the desire to live, so that these pics can be used for nothing more than special occasions and milestones that we celebrate. So let me fix your tie. Stand up straight. Smile, son. It's picture day.
Whoa.
Powerful, man.
Ooh, words worth 1,000 pictures right there.
Yeah.
No, I like the spirit line, spilling liquor. Whoa, yeah, that's shivers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dwayne, that's awesome. Thank you very much for sharing your little bit of your afternoon with us. It's much
pleasure.
appreciated, man. Jay Jones, take us out, man.
Well, yeah, like to reiterate what Dee said. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your passion, and thanks for inspiring us. Like I feel just inspired. I'm gonna get off here and write a poem after I'm done, for sure. But
Awesome.
no, it was really cool, and a lot of respect. Thanks for sharing your story.
No, my pleasure. Thank y'all for having me.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, peace out.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking.
You have been listening to Down Home. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, yeah. On a high plateau, from the one down below to the future of the funk, getting lost in the flow. Contact with the spark magex. Now it's time to flex with the force from the soul, reaching all aspects, getting deep, no time to sleep. As you reach your next phase, laying it all on the line.
The song Breaking New Ground from The Breakdown.
Feeling free, I just laugh with the joy of a beat boy, just kicking it live. A connection so strong, transcribed with the vibe like magic prescribed.